test. Everybody good? Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Everybody good? 1, 2, 3. Have Dan in the middle. Check. Everybody good? Anybody need anything back? Good? All right.
All right.
Okay, so this is more like it. I've got two guys sitting next to me here. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's an incredible day for Washington football. I'd like to start first by thanking my partners, Mitch, Mark, Irvin Johnson, David Blitzer, and the rest of the ownership group for supporting me. And also Rick Spielman and Bob Myers. They were incredible during the process, so thanks you all for the help. Today, when Adam and I were last here, we told you we were going to go find the best leader for Washington football, someone that we felt would lead Washington to be an elite franchise. And Dan, I'm so excited that we're here together, and welcome to Washington. And so, after a thorough process, we'd love to introducing you to the city here. Stacy, welcome to Washington. And on behalf of the city and the DMV, thank you both for choosing to be on this mission with us in support of the city. So Dan, you've gotten down to work quickly. All I know is, we got all together Friday, and then over the weekend, Cliff Kingsbury, an incredible offensive coordinator, and Joe Witt, incredible defensive mind, have joined our franchise, and obviously we're very excited about those two individuals. I'll let Dan describe them, but that's what it takes. It takes being able to attract the best people to create a unit, to create a culture, to create a system, to create a team where you can then recruit the best players on the field. When you get the best off the field, when you get the best team off the field, you get the best team on the field. On behalf of Commanders fans, I am thrilled to welcome you, Dan, Stacy, Joe, and Cliff to the city of Washington. And fans, with your support, the future of Washington football is bright. Thank you for your support. It's because of you all that everyone is here. Now I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, Josh. Well, when we set out to hire the next head coach of the Washington Commanders, I said earlier, we wanted to hire the best leader for our team. And we went through a really thorough process, as you all know. We spoke with a ton of great candidates, but our process led us to the decision that Dan Quinn was the perfect man for the job. Coach Quinn has all the qualities we're looking for. He's unquestionably one of the best leaders in the NFL. You can ask anybody who's been around him, coaches, players. He's a top-notch communicator, an excellent teacher and developer, not only of players, but of coaches. And he's smart, he's driven, and he's really more than anything, a phenomenal person, and just a great, great person who's going to lead this team the right way. He's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. He's proven that time and time again. He can build elite coaching staffs, which Josh alluded to. He's already started. He attracts talent because of the type of person and man that he is. He maximizes that talent, and that's what we're doing. We're building a great staff, and he's really kicking it off really well. He and I have a shared vision that we're going to build a team that with the play style and the identity that you guys will all love to watch. The fans of the Commanders, not only just here in the DMV, but all over the world, will love watching Dan's team play. Dan and I are going to be in lockstep in everything we do. We already are, and we will continue to be. We will keep the team and staff connected. He has a track record of tying buildings together, and he's going to tie this whole building together from the lunchroom to the meal room to the weight room to the equipment room to the locker room. And that's how we're going to do it, and we're going to all be moving in the same direction. So I can't wait to work with Dan. We're going to embark on a really, really fun journey together. This is going to be a great and important off-season. We've already started, but the work is just beginning. So with that, I want to hand it over to our new head coach, Dan Quinn.
All right. Man, this is such an awesome moment, and what an outstanding privilege and honor and absolute joy to be sitting here beside these outstanding men and joining them in this opportunity to have the vision of this historic franchise. So thank you to Josh and to Adam and to everybody in the organization and the ownership group that's been a part of this. So spoiler alert, you'll hear me say often, be where your feet are. And actually, I try not to say it. I do try to live it. And I'm pretty good at it, too. With one exception. Over the past few years, there's 5 words that have probably tested my feet and my head. If I get another shot. And as a coach, you prepare for it, you study for it, and there's some lessons that you can't study for. There's lessons that you just have to live. And sometimes through success and sometimes also through adversity. But once you learn those lessons, all you want to do is grab them and run and prove it. And so let me tell you, I am ready to run and prove it. Run like hell. And I'm a little older, maybe a little more chrome, and hopefully a little bit wiser. And but I'm also incredibly grateful for all of that has led to my feet being here. And actually back to here, although I grew up a Jersey kid watching the NFC East for a long time, and that's what football was to me. That's where my first love of it came. But I also spent a good deal of my 20s here. I went to Salisbury University, about 2 hours south of here, and the best part of that was my wife, Stacy. And so that was the best call I ever made to say, hey, you want to go out? So she said, yeah. And I said, all right. So 29 years later, here we are. She is my ride or die and has been with me on this football life that is ups and downs. And it's an absolute awesome life that we share together. So I also did football and track there, and I also started my coaching career in Virginia. So my first coaching career was first coaching job was at William & Mary, and 2 guys on the team right now, you'll know their names, Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott. So Mike was a senior wide receiver, so he said, all right, I'll pick you up tonight. We're going to the fraternity party. I said, all right, this coaching gig's pretty good. You know, like I get to still do what I like to do. So next thing, Sean was a sophomore DB, and relationships like those are so valuable because in this league, you know, it's hard. And so having guys that you can lean on for a long time, that's it. So those guys too. And I also coached at VMI. So in my early 20s, Virginia was a big part. So Stacey and I, we know where we are, and we know who you are, and we know what this franchise means to you, and what it will take to get it back to where it deserves to be. I know you're just starting to know me, and that's going to take some time because building trust, it always does. But I can't wait to start earning it. And that includes the players, it includes the staff, every single man, woman in this organization, and each and every fan, because that is who makes up the entire Washington Commanders team, all of us. And that's awesome because I'm going to give myself a little grace and allow one swear word here because I've done a pretty good job so far. I haven't had any, and I swear a lot. But there is nothing I enjoy more than doing hard shit with good people. And these guys here, these are some really good people. And I cannot wait to get it rocking here. I can't wait. And so we'll hit the ground running. There's lots to do, and but I want to let you know, man, I've been waiting on this moment, and so to be here with you guys today, I cannot wait to get this thing rocking. So with all that said, let's begin.
We'll open up to questions. If you can state your name and affiliation and address your questions, we'll want to come on to the table.
Dan, this is for you. John Keim, ESPN. You said, if I get another shot, the lessons you learned, what are some of the key lessons that you learned to apply, that you can apply here?
Yeah, that's an awesome one, John. I think first and foremost, in leaving there, I wanted to make sure I did a 360 to find, you know, what would be some potential blind spots, you know, that I did, and in a good way of trying to take on too much at times. And so that's why for me, coming into, you know, when I was looking to, if I got another shot, there were a couple things that I wanted to find. One, you know, was from the ownership side, a team that support, you know, the general manager side to be in lockstep and have a partner with. And then the third part, you know, was like a fan base that was really wanting to go get after it. The lessons for me was, man, be right, you know, it's the players and the team. And it came from a good place of trying to help and solve problems, but make sure, keep the main thing, John. And I had some time to test that in Dallas. And so that was good for me to go and do that and go through that process because I'm a much stronger coach today than when I took over, you know, years back in Atlanta. And so, like I said earlier, man, you want to run with those lessons and go prove it. And the best competitive moments in my life have come when you had to go prove it. And that's what I want to apply.
The other thing I would say is just having gone through the process with a bunch of people, you know, Dan came in with a real vision for how to build a cohesive staff that worked together. You know, I think it is more than just one person. It's a front office that works together with everything: analytics, sports science, player development, player selection, and then it's a coaching staff that brings a lot of both leadership and culture, but also play calling and innovation. And Dan really had all that in his head. He had a plan, and he's got a few more. You saw this weekend, but he's got a few more tricks up his sleeve. So it was really impressive.
John Keim, ESPN. At what point, how are you? At what point were you, there are obviously a lot of names that are going to come out of this. At what point were you sold that Dan is the guy? And you obviously probably known him for a while or knew of him. So what point were you sold that he is the right guy for here?
Every time we spoke with Dan, it became more and more clear that he was the guy. And we interviewed him twice, and both times it's like we're speaking the same language. And it was really, really cool. Had a great connection, had a great shared vision. So it was almost right away that I knew Dan would be the great coach for us.
Hi, Nick Jafala with the Washington Post. I guess this is for Adam and Josh, first of all. I know you guys have been through various coaching searches at past stops, but working together on this one, did anything surprise you about this process?
I mean, look, obviously the NFL has its own unique approach, its own unique rules. It's a very thorough process. Certainly there are times where you're allowed to talk to people and not allowed to talk to people. So what that does is it creates longer process, and it was very thorough, and then it was great working with Adam. I got to see him in action. I got to see all the relationships that he had around the league. I got to see how prepared he was coming into the coaching search, and then obviously how he bonded with candidates and how he bonded with coaching candidates, and so all that really reflected well on Adam, and I was very excited to be working with him through the process.
Yeah, for me, Nikki, it's all new to me. So there's all real surprising. Obviously, there's a lot of different rules you have to go through. The thing that really stood out to me is having a thorough process leads you to the right person, and that's really the big thing. Not getting Dan. That's what happened.
And for Dan, you've had interviews in I think each of the last 2 off seasons. What made this the right time for you to make this move and with this team?
Nikki, I thought coming in, as a coach who has done it before, I knew then what I was looking for. I think when you're first going through it as a first time, you got to go get it and you got to go take it. After you've been through the experience, you want to make sure that you can align it exactly like you want to do to go kick ass. And so that's what I was, looking for specific markers, because if I wasn't going to find them, then I wasn't going to do it. And I desperately wanted to, but if the markers weren't in line to say, hey, this alignment between ownership, general manager, the club, I wouldn't have. So when this one was here, it was please call, because this one is different. And this franchise has a historic mark on the NFL. And so that was different. I knew that was different. And so once I knew ownership, I knew general manager, organization, like everything checked, Nikki. And so it was the one that was a flashing light to me that say this is the moment, this is the one.
Coach David Aldridge with The Athletic. Welcome to D.C.
Thanks, David.
A couple of questions for you. One, as you looked at the personnel on this team, what kind of stood out to you as I can work with that, I can make that work?
Yeah, I thought first side, I'll start with the defense because that's, unfortunately that's sometimes where my eyes go first. But I would say, man, was I impressed, by the inside of the defense, with the defensive tackles and knowing that it starts up front on both sides, man. Defensive line and offensive line. So that was the spot that jumped out to me, as the defensive tackles. And then the skill, at receiver. And you have to have elite players on the edge for the matchup. So when they come, David, that's when you got to go attack. So those would have been the two things that jumped out to me. I certainly, played against the club, so I know about more of the offensive players and game planning and studying. But this receiving group, really had skill, and they would test you and push you and find matchups. And so that, to me, of guys, that's where it stood out to me first.
Number two, in our personal lives, our spouses always provide this role, but in your professional life, who is the person that tells you that's not a good idea?
Yeah.
that you listen to.
Yes, and I think you need that, right? You have to have somebody that can see around the corners and knowing and protecting your blind spots. And so when I referred to that person of what I was looking for, I was really referring to Adam, to say, in this relationship, it's built on trust and we go through it together. But in football, the best of the best have this connection rock solid and, at the core, because they deal with things that no one else really does. And so when you win, more, adulation. When you lose, it's harder. So having the person who's the partner to go through those experiences with is really important. And so I don't know if Bob Myers is here, but Bob and Steve had given us a little insight. I had known Steve as a friend. I hadn't known Bob, but I saw what good looked like between a head coach and a general manager. Not just, and there's other sports I've seen it obviously as well, but I wanted to do, we could do that for him and I, a goal years from now to say, Dan and Adam, they did it the best that anybody's done in professional sports. And that's a super high bar, but that's the standard that we want to get it to, because at the end of it, it's not about the credit or what it is. It's just about us over the long term, kicking ass for a long time together. And we both share that vision. So on every organization and every team, you need that. And so that's why when I said why that was so damn important to me to find the right general manager to partner up with, because they're the ones that have to be shoulder to shoulder with you through the good and through the adversity as well. And so each person has that, and Stacey is that no matter what. So she's first, and she knows football pretty good too. But professionally, it's Adam.
Hey guys, JP Finley with NBC4 and 106.7 The Fan. Dan, this is a question for you. Your records as a defensive coordinator speak for themselves. It's all very impressive. When you were coaching in Atlanta, some of those defensive numbers weren't there. How do you take on your second chance here, what you do differently as a DC versus a head coach?
Yeah, isn't that the best? That's one of the lessons to take on, to say, man, I've got to make sure, like, after doing the 360 of leaving Atlanta, of spreading myself too thin. And so where I need to be is right there with the offense, right there with the defense and the special teams, and not allow outside things in the organization, just more things to go. So the main thing, keep the main thing, and that's the players and the team. And that's why, I'll lean on Adam so hard. I didn't want anything other than that, to be right there doing it. So good news, I had some chances over the last 3 years to do that and to prove that and to delegate and make sure I could keep the main thing and focus right where it needed to be. And that's when the best results come. So you can't turn back the clock, but you do have to learn the lesson. And that's what I wanted to make sure when I left Atlanta. It was during the middle of the season, and so you have time to reflect. It's lonely, it's disappointing, it's depressing, but you don't want to just rinse and repeat. You want to make sure, how do I take this, change it, and then make sure you get to prove it again. And so that was the silver lining in this. Like, I'm a better version of me today than I was, 3 and 4 and 5 years ago. And so that's why I get to prove that.
And then this one for Josh and Adam. Throughout the coaching search, it seems like it's been very collaborative. At what point does the collaboration maybe cease a little bit and it becomes more the traditional hierarchy that you talked about building, or will it remain really collaborative throughout?
Well, I think it's sort of now. I mean, it's all collaborative. I mean, first of all, you're always going to be collaborative, and the alignment amongst the three of us, amongst ownership, obviously coaching and front office is very important. But obviously, I hired, these two gentlemen are sitting next to me because they know what they're doing, and Adam's gonna run the front office and the football ops, and Dan's gonna run the coaching staff and the on-field operation, and I'll be there obviously and be educated and make sure that things going in the right direction. But I'm not, this is their job, right? So. The collaboration will be there, but obviously their ability to operate and do what they do starts today.
Yeah, I agree with what Josh said. I learned a ton from Josh during this process, so love to keep leaning on him throughout everything we do. And then with Dan, helping him, he's building his staff, so I'm going to help him with that. He's going to help us with finding players, so the collaboration is going to continue through perpetuity.
Good UCLA word.
Yeah. You're teaching that at Salisbury.
Term.
I'm outsmarted here. This is
Hi, Ben Standig with The Athletic. Dan, welcome to town. For you, in terms of this new opportunity, how do you see yourself, I guess, what type of coach are you ultimately going to be? Are you going to be calling plays? Do you see, obviously, you're familiar with your defensive coordinator. How will sort of that collaboration work as well?
Yeah, I think the big thing to get across, like, the essence of a head coach is to put it all together. It's not to be an offensive coach or a defensive coach or a special teams coach. Like, it's everything, and that's what the essence is of the job. It's the chemistry, it's the messaging, it's the play style, it's the attitude, it's the swagger. Like, that's my number one job, to make sure all of this comes together. Obviously, I cut my teeth on the defensive side, so that part's important, but Joe will call the plays on defense, and Cliff will call the plays on offense, and I'll certainly be there. The game management portion is so critical, so I wanted to make sure the best version of me, like I said, is coaching the entire team and making sure our play style is so right that it's a nightmare for teams to play against, between the personnel, that Adam puts together, the scheme from the coaching side, and then, quite honestly, for me, the play style, to say playing against us is really hard. And the attitude, the speed, the effort, the ball hawking, the tackling, the finishing of blocks, the explosive plays, that's how, we create a nightmare to go against, and we're going to work our ass off to do that. But as far as play calling, I'll be involved with it, but those guys will call the game. But the essence of this job as a head coach isn't just to be on one side. It's to tie everything together, and that's when I'm at my best, and so that's what I'll do.
And for you and Adam, obviously quarterback is such an important position in this sport. You guys may have the opportunity to draft one in the first round, and Sam Howell is here as well. How much of your conversations were about what happens at quarterback, and how important is Cliff to whatever it is you guys plan to do at that position?
Yeah, I'll take that one if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just got started, Ben, so we haven't even had discussions yet as the staff with that. Obviously, it's the most important position on the field, and we're going to put a lot of time into it, but as of now, we haven't even gotten started on that one.
Sam Fortier with the Washington Post. Welcome to D.C. Why Cliff and Joe?
Well, I think I'll take you back a bit. And so when you're getting prepared for this, you're not sure what job you're going to get. You're thinking, okay, this, opportunity. So it's a little different than being on their side, where they were going to select, where on the coaching side, you were going to see where would be a good fit. And the coaching staff would be the fit irregardless of where you went. Okay, so for me, selecting a place that I would be able to potentially coach didn't have to do with did they have a quarterback or cap space or any of that. It was ownership and general manager and fan base and what you could create together, because cap space changes. I was looking to say, how could we do something long-term to kick ass for a long time and continue to play well, not just because they had won this or won that. So Cliff has always been somebody that I've kept up with. Years ago, we both coached in college, and we first met each other at an award show and just kind of hit it off on that time, and then competed against each other. I certainly followed his career, through his time at Tech and then into Arizona and competing. And so in the same way of why I wanted to hire Kyle years ago, like, he was hard to go against. He would stretch the field horizontally and vertically, and going against Cliff, those same feelings you had. This is going to be tough. Matchups, formation, speed, shots down the field, aggressiveness, boldness to go. And so as a coach, you were writing down some names, if this is something in your future, that said, if I get that shot, this is somebody I would want to talk to. And so that's where the start came from him. We're really pumped that he's going to be a part of it. Obviously, I know people talk about, his acumen with quarterbacks, and that's proven, but he's also an excellent coach. He's not just, the guy that's going to be with the quarterbacks the whole time. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that. And then with Joe, it's a little different because I had a chance to be shoulder to shoulder with him, over the last 3 years in Dallas. And through that time, I've just seen the detail, the connection, the play style, and so to play good defense, you better be a good tackling team, and you better know how to take the ball away. And those are two things Joe and the units that he was charged with have been excellent at. And I think over the last 3 years, with Joe there, the team had been, at the top of the league in terms of takeaways and defensive touchdowns. If you want to play good defense, you better tackle, because I'm not talking about in the A gap. I'm talking about there's space plays that happen in today's NFL. And so in that space, how do you have the technique to go and make tackles where guys like Cliff and Kyle and everybody else want to create all this space to say, make it hard. So you better be a good tackling team, and you better know how to get the ball away and show good disguises, to make the quarterback have to read the coverages after he has the ball in his hand. And Joe's been exceptional at that through his career. So that's why when those moments come and you want to nail it, you do it and you go for it. And so I appreciate Josh and Adam when the moment came to go be aggressive, we were going to go do that.
Can you take us through the timeline, the emotions of interviewing for this job, and then what was the moment like when you got the call?
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. It's, nobody's ringing. All right, you put your phone back. Is anybody calling? No, they're not calling. So, is my phone working? Yes, it's still working. So I wanted this moment. And so, you were just that. And so Stacey and I took a ride, out in the car, and we don't ever do that. She's like, come on, let's get out of the house. And so we just, went around. And then Thursday night, I think, or whatever it was, a couple nights ago, Adam had called and extended it out. And so then you have to kind of wait overnight to get there. And so you don't sleep much that night. And then it probably doesn't fully hit you until you get your feet on the ground here. And so that was what was really cool about last night. We were not expecting to see Adam and his wife Jen there on the tarmac. And so, that's brotherhood. That's showing, I'm in with you. And that was awesome. So you want the call, you're ready for the call, but it becomes more real when you get there because, you want it, you're there. But when you get it, you're pumped to say, let's go do this. And so Stacey's been with me the whole time through it. And so it's all the good, the bad, and everything in between. And so this football life we live together is fun. But it's moments like that it's hard to stay present and be where your feet are, in those moments. But it's also one of the really cool times to say, man, you get to go prove it and kick ass and have fun doing it. And so that's what we plan on doing.
Sam, I'll tell you, too, he didn't answer when I called. He's playing hard to get. So.
It made me wait so long. I'm not answering the first ring. Got to make him feel a little some way,
Barry Sverluga from the Washington Post. For Dan and Adam, you've spoken about a shared vision, speaking the same language. I wonder what that means. Is that in a football way, like I like the hybrid 4-3, or what are some specific examples of sharing that language?
I think we can probably start. I'll start it and then kick it over to you. I think it's probably deeper than scheme, because if you went around to the other 31 teams, there'd be a lot of the same scheme. There's going to be wide zone, this passing concept. It might be a version of cover 3 or man-to-man. So all 32 play some of that. It's more about the play style and the vision of how to feature players into that play style. And so that's one of the things that I love about coaching is finding unique traits that a player has, and then how could we fit them into a system, into a structure to make it happen. And so I was fortunate in Dallas. It pushed me further into new places, into new things to find, like a guy like Micah Parsons who wasn't just a linebacker, and he could do other things. And so Adam and I have been at it together for a long time to know that there's a play style and traits that players have of length and speed and ball hawking ability and guys who can finish on offense, whether the explosive play is a screen that can go or a line of scrimmage play. Like we both recognize that it does start up front, and we know what that looks like and how it fits in together. So we together wanted to make sure that every time people see us play, they said, man, these guys are fast, they are physical, they absolutely, finish at a rate that's not normal. And so he's seen what that's looked like. He's lived it, on, the 3 clubs, on his way up to see all that. And so having the ability to go to other teams, there's advantage to that because for everybody else, and I've said this to owners before, I remember saying to the Jones, well, we've never been anywhere else. This is the only way. When you get to other places, you find things that you would take along the way that you get to share about it. And so just this morning, he and I are going through the roster again and talking. So it's more of a play style and an attitude and traits than it is a scheme of a 3-4 or 4-3. Football scheme evolves, but the player side of things and Adam and his staff and their crew of making sure we're always finding ways to feature the unique things that players have, and we'll work really hard to do that here.
Yeah, I think you covered it all, but I'll probably be repeating you here a little bit. But yeah, it's that identity, that play style that we're looking for. That when you're watching we call it the silent tape. When you're watching on TV and you turn the volume down, you just see how fast and physical and aggressive you are on both sides of the ball. Finishers, that type of style is what you're looking for. And whether it's 4-3, 3-4, however you want to talk, wide zone, any type of offense, it's finding those types of guys and it's really the type of people that we want to bring in the building, and people that love football, who are going to, give it all for us on the field. So really throughout the whole process, it's like we're speaking the same language. It's like I'm interviewing almost a person just like me who thinks the same way about football. So I think that would answer your question, hopefully.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Dan, Chick Hernandez, WUSA 9. You're filling out your staff. You've got Cliff Kingsbury as your OC. What happens now to Eric Bieniemy?
I had a good visit, Chick. I'm glad that you brought up EB because I think he's an excellent coach. And so I had a chance to visit with him today. And so we'll continue that dialogue to go. He's, no longer, we're not going to work together here, but in this coaching brotherhood, I wanted him to know, man, I really respect the work that he's done. And as coaches, we all stay connected even though we're on different teams. So I wish EB nothing but the best, and he'll do a great job. I was really pumped that he took his shot this year and went for it, and so I've got a lot of respect for him.
And Josh, you've got 2 other squads that you manage. How different was the search for a head coach here, considering this is a team that you grew up watching, and what it means to you personally?
Look, obviously, growing up in Washington and Chevy Chase, all the history that I experienced with the Joe Gibbs era and all the championships, made this super meaningful for me personally in terms of being at this moment and being able to, I think, propel this team forward towards our goal, which is to being elite. None of us up here want to do anything but be elite. So I think that this is a big day for me. Big day personally, and we're all really excited about delivering for this city and for the area.
Steve Weiner, Associated Press. Dan, I know obviously you've got a lot of work to do, but how excited are you about being able to pick your own quarterback and kind of mold this roster and all the options you have in front of you?
Well, I think number one, I'm pumped because you get to do it with people that you want to share this vision with. And going into it, the team has excellent players, and that's job number one, to find those unique guys on our team and feature them into the right spot. So before you even get to the draft, there's the own club, here in our own house, to evaluate and handle. And then into free agency, you add some more, and then into the draft. So we're just getting rolling, and this wave is going to keep riding for a long time. But we're just catching it right now. So as we're hitting it, it's first about our club and in-house. Then you expand some more into free agency because that ties into the draft. So conversations with Adam, okay, you can spend on free agency here, but there's good depth at the position in the draft there, and that's the strategy and the acumen that he has of knowing which levers to pull based on free agency and the draft. But we want really tough, competitive-ass guys that are going to absolutely go for it. That's the trait. That's the secret sauce. And the more people we have on that, you're going to hear us see competition, talk competition at every corner. And that's what these elite NFL players are. They grew up their whole life competing. So, why would we not put them into anything other than this, competitive cauldron to roll? And so that's what we plan on doing over and over and over again. But as far as the draft, that's a little too far down the line for me right now.
And Adam, you guys have talked a lot about collaboration. What do you expect Dan's role to be in terms of you guys when you're figuring out those kind of decisions moving forward, and kind of what kind of input you seek from him?
Yeah, that's the exact environment that I want to be in, is being collaborative with the head coach through every decision that we make. And that's whether that's the draft, free agency. We're going to be talking all the time. We may have a door connecting our offices. That's collaboration, right?
Yes.
So, but yeah, so every decision we make, we're going to talk. We're not going to make a decision without talking to each other. We're going to come out of that room, whichever door we come out of, with the same answer in mind.
Scott Abraham, ABC7. Dan, welcome to Washington.
Thanks, Scott.
The word rebuild came up a couple of times during Adam's press conference. Do you view this as a rebuild? And if so, what's the process of going through a rebuild, and time frame wise, how do you want your team to kind of take shape during this rebuild?
Your words, not mine. All right. So I'm really honestly glad that you brought it up. And I know it's a big topic. And I would say this is a recalibrate, finding our north again. And that starts, with our identity of our club. So, no, you will not hear me say the word rebuild at all. This is about assessing what we have, how do we add to that, and then how quickly we can accelerate this process together. Now, how do you do that? Connection, staff, off-season, into training camp, and then ultimately putting all these guys to find the best group to help us go play as well as we can, as fast as we can. So there is no timeline on that, but we will push it hard to see how good we can get and how fast we can get. But I see it much more as a recalibration to say, let's find our north, own our identity of how we're going to get it on, and then push hard to reach that. And like all things, it takes some trust, between teammates, staff, personnel, ownership. But the more connection we have, the faster we'll get there. And there's a lot to get done, but I honestly do not see that word as part of my thinking at all.
You said the word identity. What does a Dan Quinn-led football team look like? Adjectives. Tell us what it'll look like.
I would say, if I had to say two right now, it'd be explosive and physical. And the explosive comes offensively and on the return game from big plays. Through the run game, through play action, through the passing game, ones that can change field position. And those are the explosive plays that you have to keep going and being aggressive to go. On defense, that's the energy-generating football that takes place on an interception, on a score for, returning on defense, a forced fumble, the sacks, the ones that create negative plays for an offense to put them in some disadvantaged situations. Like we like playing from 2nd and 12 and 13 and 3rd and longer. So how do you do that? You've got to be bold. You've got to be aggressive. Having the players to do that, that's part of what we do. And then train them to do it over and over and over again. It's so important for us to find guys of things they can do versus things they can't do. And I can remember early on as a coach hearing a scout say, well, he's a little slow. He's, not very long, but I said, man, I can't wait to watch him. I want to find the unique stuff that a guy does have, and then how do we put him into this? And so if we bring a guy here, I want to make sure I'm very clear to Adam to say, this is how we would feature this player. He's the F tight end. He's the second halfback. He's the starting, defensive end, whatever that looks like. And then we can push that player into that vision. Quite honestly, when players leave college, they don't know what their vision is. And that's our job to help them get there. And why do guys develop faster than others? Sometimes the vision of what they can become is so different than what they did in college. They chose a college, the system changed, the coaching staff changed, whatever it might have been. And now you put them into a space that you know how to feature them. So why do late round draft picks and free agents take off? There was a specific plan for how that guy could be used. And that's the connection I have to be able to give to Adam as often as I can. So explosive and physical. And I'd hope, teams that have to play against us are like, damn, this is going to be hard today. And having that physical nature of the way that we finish plays that jumps out off tape, inspires others that we're with, and keeps pushing this standard that you're going to hear me say a lot, finding these standards together. So I would say explosive and physical would be two things that I hope every time we play and get it on that you guys feel that.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. David Harrison, Sports Illustrated. Coach, welcome to D.C.
Thanks, David.
I noticed over your track record, stylistically, scheme-wise, however you want to call it, you kind of shifted from a little bit more even front to odd front defenses. Can you just kind of talk about, from a football theology standpoint, that evolution of your defenses?
Sure. And I think it's good to know that, I'll tell you a quick story of why, you have to evolve, and it does have to change. And during that time of reflection, I said in between leaving Atlanta and going to Dallas, I think I referred to Josh and Adam and did a 360 on myself. The other thing I did during that time defensively was we put the tape together from 2013 to 2020. So that included Seattle and it included Atlanta because it was really the same system in those 8 years of defense. And what had once been good was no longer good enough. And so playing 3 deep the way that we did in Seattle and early on in Atlanta, there were some good things that went along with that. As it went further, more completions when you played this kind of vision zone, more troubled routes. And there's some excellent offensive coaches, so they knew this and this causes them problems and this and this. So coming back for that second lap, I knew I wasn't going to rinse and repeat. What were some things around the league and through college ball that could be different? And so coming back into Dallas, the system that we put together will be similar to the one here to say, let's collectively put together the Commanders' offense and defense. So that's why it evolved, where some things were good early on and they changed. Some things can stand the test of it, this front, this thing, but it did have to evolve, especially on the coverage side. The offense and the quarterbacks were moving ahead faster than that scheme would allow. And so that is why having that space for me, although it sucked and it was depressing and pissed you off, there was this silver lining in that that made me become a better coach, because I had to look at myself, not just from the lens of a head coach, but I also had to look at it from a lens on defense. I had to look at it, why weren't we good enough in 4-minute offense? I wanted to go back and find it through those years. And so that's why I was so adamant about when you get those lessons, like, you want to go and run with them to prove it. And so they've been in my pocket on some things, and others I got to show through, my time in Dallas. And that was a fun process to go through. So that's where it was, where things evolve and change. And, in 5 or 6 years from now, it won't be the same exact things anymore either. So you have to constantly keep pushing. You've got to be innovative. You've got to be on the edge of things. Not all the things that you try work, like it goes like this. So sometimes in OTAs and training camp, let's look at a coverage or look at a blitz and then take it out. It's too busy, takes too much time. If a player has to overthink it, it's not the right call. I want them, from the lens of their vision in the helmet, that they can go and really attack. And if I have to make them overthink it, whether it be at the quarterback position, this check to this check to this check, or as a defensive play caller, to this, to this, to this, and they have to slow down where they can't play fast and aggressive and hitting, then it's not the right fit. So there's some trial and error, but it is part of coaching that makes this profession so much fun, because it's always evolving. It's never, you don't get bored doing this, so it feeds into my good, okay, what's next personality. But I do like that there's something next, and it's next, and it's next, and you better keep up, or you get left behind on some things. And I learned that lesson, and so that's why evolving and having a plan of how to do that each off season, that's a really big deal.
And then Coach Witt once said that one of his 2 dream jobs was being the defense coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. But obviously, that dream has shifted. He came with you. What does that mean to you as a leader for him?
Yeah, and I'm really fortunate that Joe's had a big impact on me. Leaving Atlanta and coming to Dallas, I knew Joe had special traits about him, and not just in the coverage side, although that's, I would say his superpower of the detail, the coverage, the play style. But what also is there is the ball hawking and the tackling and the fundamentals. So he grew up a coach's kid. So Joe's father was an exceptional coach at Auburn for a really long time. You're a good coach when you don't coach there anymore and you still have a locker in the coach's locker room. Like, that's Joe Witt Sr., okay? So coming up as a coach's kid, he'd been on practice field since he was this tall. And so he knew what good looked like along the way. And he's been more than ready for this opportunity to do it. And I'm thrilled to add him into it, because it also allows some of the language for me to, stay connected to in a good way. Because, for me, learning the language offensively, if I had to do that again defensively, it would have been longer. Now I can accelerate that process. So we're really pumped he's here. He's got a fantastic football background.
Hey, Dan, George Wallace, WTOP. Welcome to D.C.
Thanks, George.
Kind of a unique situation, obviously. New ownership group, first-time general manager. How important was that for you going into this kind of everybody's starting fresh this year?
Yeah, I thought I didn't think of it in that way of starting fresh, but I did think of it as what I was looking for, to be a part of, a team like this. And so that was probably more important than the newness of it. But to get to start kind of all together, I think that's a really cool thing. And I hope, many years from now we look back on this day and say, that was really cool. That's when this thing started. That's when we got it all together back on, whatever the date was, on 2024 in February. We look back, 20 years from now and say, that's how you do it. And that's huge standards, huge expectations of what we have for all of us. But that's how we want to set them. And so I think it is kind of cool. I didn't think about it, but you're right. To start something fresh together, it's pretty rare. I don't know how many times that's happened in the history of sport, but I think that's a pretty good precedent to go for it.
Hey guys, Mitch Tischler, Mighty Mouse Sports. For Adam, now that I guess you have the small task of hiring a head coach behind you, how do you foresee filling out the rest of the front office? And is that something that you're ready to attack the draft with the guys you have in house, or do you think that's something that you'll address before or as you lead up to the draft?
Yeah, I've gotten to meet all of our scouts finally now. Went down to Mobile and got a chance to meet all of our college scouts. Really like all of them. I knew the scouts in-house from my time here the last couple of weeks. So it's a really good group. If we have a chance to add some talented people, we will. But I don't foresee making any changes throughout this whole draft process. I'm really happy with who we have right now.
And for Dan, being that you were in the NFC East, obviously, for the past couple of years, how much do you think that allows you to kind of be a little bit ahead of the curve as you hit the ground running here, being that you know a little bit of the personnel both here and obviously around the rest of the division?
Yeah, and like I said, growing up, this is the NFC East, what I watched, just like Josh did, and not exactly this guy to my left, but it was such a cool time to see that, that was my vision of what football would be as part of being in the NFC East. So over the last 3 years to see, the teams, and like most things, some staffs have changed already, us being one, and, everything's a little bit different. But what I do know is this is a really cool division. And I wouldn't say there's an advantage here or there, but knowing some of the personnel, I meant from a scheme standpoint, but knowing some of the personnel of how to match up and how to defend, that is important because schemes will change, coaches will change. Philadelphia has some, obviously we had some, Giants have some. So knowing the scheme will change, but a lot of who the players are, that's a good thing. And I would say, yeah, there's definitely some advantage with that.
Hi, Liam Griffin, Washington Times. Dan, I want to know, what does a successful first season look like for you guys? Do you have a record in mind? Do you have what do you want to see from that team by the end of the first season?
I would say, one, it's a cool question, Liam. I would say I want to make sure, above all things, that our identity takes place about how we play football, and that when people watch us play, they know what Commanders football looks like. We're going to find our true north to say we are going to be explosive, we are going to be physical. If we do those things right, and if we can get to that space quickly, the success will follow from that. But you can't put a prediction on that without having those things in place. So I'm somebody that wants to hit every rung of the ladder and not jump across steps to get to somewhere where you left some things off. So we're going to hit all those markers on the way. How quickly our team connects, how quickly the staff and the team connects, that's where it's at. And so the success will be derived from that. And we're going to try to accelerate as fast as we can, but there's a lot of work to do. And so once we get to that final roster that we put in place to start the season in September, we got a lot of work to do between now and then.
Hello all, Brandy Flores, DC News Now. Dan, welcome to Washington.
Thank you.
Since it was announced that you were taking the head coaching job with the Commanders, it has been nothing but praises from your former players to former assistants. How important is it to you that throughout your career that you've established to be not just a good leader, but a good person, that these people will seem like they'll follow you to the end of time?
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
That was not a plan.
Yeah. All those guys, thank you. The reason I got into coaching was the players. Like, I've loved football my whole life coming up. Like, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I went to college. I wanted to teach and coach. And so when I was in college, I found out that I didn't have to teach. I could just coach. I said, that's a pretty good gig. I'll go that way. So, but teaching has been part of what I've done for my whole life, and that connection with people and players specifically is what I've done. I love the fact that you get to help develop somebody and them to achieve things that maybe they didn't even think were possible. So to see a player develop and get into that, second contract or third contract, and you helped change their life, like, that's really big. And early on, I didn't know, could you have an impact as a coach in pro ball? You say, well, it's a business and that, and from the outside, it's a really fair question. But from the inside, it's completely false because of that connection and knowing that lives get changed because of the impact we can make for one another. And so I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for some of those players that are saying those things. They were the ones in Seattle that helped create a moment for me in Atlanta. Same thing in Dallas. And so that's why, for me, I've learned a lot from players. Seeing some from the vision of their helmet, of what it could look like, I can't tell you how much I learned from Bryant Young. You know, when I first became a coach in San Francisco, his standard of performance was second to none. He set the bar so high, it was hard to go like, well, he doesn't do it like BY. And Jason Taylor and others that I've coached along the way through Seattle, and guys, you know, household names you'd know, but you may not know who Michael Bennett was as an undrafted free agent at A&M, to see his life get changed, or the connection with Matt Ryan and seeing what that meant, you know, to see those experiences happen. And then same thing in Dallas, you know, with a number of the players there. So I absolutely love it. I think it's leadership. And early on, I think I felt like leadership was just about how do I lead. And then as I got maybe a little more chrome and a little older, I recognized leadership wasn't just about me. It's helping others see the leadership in themselves and what they could become, and giving them a vision of what their career and path could look like. And there would be good days and hard days, always in between. But if we stayed consistent with these guys, like, let's face it, NFL players have been bullshitted a lot in their lives. They were great high school players to get recruited, a lot of BS going on there, getting into the NFL. They need to be told the truth about things. And they appreciated that, the honesty when it's going good. And I can see Jason nodding his head, because they need that. And to just dance around, oh, it was a numbers game, or it wasn't your fault, or like, that's not accurate. Like, tell these guys the truth. They want to be great. And we have to sometimes, as coaches and leaders, tell them the things they don't want to hear. And I'm comfortable doing that because they know I come from a place that I care about them, I love them, and I want the best for them. So it's why I coach, to have those connections with everybody involved with it. I've loved being on a team. It's my favorite thing. I've been over on like over 78 teams in my life, you know, from being a 7-year-old to sports through, you know, high school and college and pro ball. And so being on a team is what I know, and it's what I love. So that's why that connection's so damn important to me, players, coaches, the whole thing. And when you get it really good and really tight, that's when the magic stuff happens. And it's hard to do that. We got different than, you know, I know, you know, Josh from his background in hoops and in hockey, like, it's a big team, you know. We got to run 100 deep here, you know, between players, coaches, staff, to get connected. And if you can get that many people together on a vision of how to do things, knowing that, like, every role matters, you know, for game day, to just support those guys, that's when you hit it. And knowing every person in this building has a role in winning. And that's what we got to get to. And the players feel that. And that's why I love it so much.
Thank you, Dan.
Candace
Candace.
Buckner, Washington Post. So I'll preface this by saying 53 is not old at all.
Thank you.
But as you were watching the NFL cycle, hiring cycles the last 2 years, and the trend of hiring younger coaches, while you were waiting and being optimistic about your next shot, did you have to fight discouragement that maybe the league was passing your group, your age group over?
Young and shiny, right? Yeah, okay. Well, I would say I was once young and shiny, so I wanted to make sure, I don't see myself as that. So it was honestly more like offensive versus defensive. So it was nice to see people recognizing you got to coach the whole team. That's a head coach. That's the essence of it. It's not just this one group and hope it goes good on the other side. That's what an offensive coordinator does, a special teams coordinator, and a defense coordinator does. So it was never one to me about old or young. Like, we've seen some really good coaches, two who I regard very highly, who just, you know, finished their careers this year in their 70s. And, like, that's the mark for me. You know, let's talk about that in those terms. But it wasn't necessarily age as much as it was offense versus defense. So I can't believe you outed me. I am 53, but I was absolutely going to go for 45, but this probably gave it away. So.
Any of the players, either through phone call or just text?
Not yet. And now that I'm here, I look forward to getting to do that. There's so many guidelines that you can and can't follow, but more than anything, I just want them to know like how pumped I am to get rocking with them. And we're going to compete our asses off together. And so knowing that, I hope they feel the energy that's and momentum that's going to come from this day forward. And knowing that years ago, I can remember Matt Ryan, after my first year together, he said, I felt like I got traded, but I went back to the same building. And I thought to myself, good job, because that's what I was wanting them to feel. They needed a recalibration, and our club does too. And so that's what I anticipate doing.
That's great. Thank you.
Good job. All right, thanks. That is really cool, you guys. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, thank you. Come on over. Go Goals!
Josh, come in for the first one, and then we'll have you both step out. One more. You good? Good. One more. Okay. And then Stacey and Dan, you stay. All right. Everyone else can head off for now. Do you just solo with you guys together?
Go Goals!
And then coach, you can stay here, Stacey, you'll come with me. And then first one is with them, and then with you. We're going to put Adam in the photo. You guys stay right there. Adam, come on in. All right, all good there? Coach,
Do you do coach too?
Good? All right. And then last one, Coach, you and Josh, thank you. Helmet.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Gotta have that helmet.
Good?
Thank you,
All
guys.
right, gentlemen, we're going to head off.
Stage left. Thank you, guys.
He looks it.
I'll take it.
Or like move this thing.
So just reach out to me if you want to and then on schools.
I needed you up there smiling.
I know, I didn't do it.
I went
I know.
What used to happen and what does happen now.
Yeah, I mean, two different.
See, my phone is right there. Rick Spielman. I appreciate it.
Did she get hers?
Yeah.
Okay. That was a great practice.
priority.
Peters is not doing a scrum. It'll be Rick Spielman.
That should be no problem. Where are they? Second one in. Do that. A poderosito. What's up, buddy? Oh, how are you? Marathon right there, dude. You know Gio? You know Gio? No. Gio Delfa.
How you doing, Jim?
We used to work together. He does the Spanish language broadcast. Gio works with us at 4, but also Telemundo 44.
Oh, nice.
He works with Mo and Moises. Yeah, he's the analyst. El Poderoso. I think I've seen you on Moises stories. Yeah. Moises is the play-by-play. He does the color. So like the touchdown.
You see my sticks right there? Can you take them out?
Which one, the second or third?
I analyze my see what happens years of high school.
Talk to me real quick. It's already on. You got it on.
Check, Mike, check.
Good now.
There's only one.
They're good now. Ever since the consortium, whatever, downtown consortium.
What was that?
You can pick schools now.
Yeah, I bought
Oh, really?
Like 5 schools, like Blair, Einstein, Wheaton, Northwood now. Depending on your academic program.
Is BCC in that or no?
I'm gonna move out of the way.
BCC is, I don't know.
John jumping up there.
Yeah, we're gonna go down. Let's go right down in here, and then if anybody needs to fill this space, feel free.
All right.
What was the process like from your perspective?
Yeah, no, it was, first of all, I have to say that how incredibly honored I was that I was able to be a part of this group. And with Josh Harris, when him and Bob had called me and asked me to participate in this, it was just an unbelievable honor. And to see how thorough the GM process was, to see how thorough this coaching search was, and whatever I can add to the process, it was, I thought, as thorough as I've ever been associated with.
Why do you think Dan's the right fit here?
There's no question, just off his press conference. He's a leader of men. I think that's exactly what Josh and Adam were looking for in a head coach. It speaks volumes on when you have players comment on how important that relationship is and how Dan is, it's more than just X and O's. Dan brings a whole different element on relationships, on ability to teach, on ability to evolve, and he was a perfect head coach for this situation.
Rick, you said that it's as thorough as anything that you had been part of. What made it so different in that regard?
I think once we sat down with Bob and with Josh and decided on this is how we're going to do it, we're going to do it the right way, we're going to take our time, and make sure that we get this right. It's the first time Josh had to go through this process on the NFL side. I think Bob, his track record speaks for itself, and my ability to just add from the NFL element and what I've experienced, what I've done well, the mistakes I've made, and to share those as we went forward to come up with the result you saw today.
You've done this before. Is it hard to build a plan out and then stick to that plan as things start changing in the process?
It's not if you stick to the plan. It's just like anything, whether you're going through free agency, whether you're going through the draft, whether you're hiring another head coach, that you have to stick to your process. And regardless of the pressures coming from the outside, you know what's right. And Josh and Adam did a phenomenal job sticking to the process to make sure they got this right.
Did you feel pressures coming at any point?
No, not at all. Don't worry about it, guys. The most important thing is that you come in here, you get the right people in place, and with Josh making the decision to hire Adam, and then Josh and Adam making the decision to hire DQ, Dan Quinn, that's what a thorough process is about.
Was there anything specific in his interviews that stood out to you?
I'm
about
sorry?
Dan? About Dan's interviews?
Yeah, well, Dan had actually was a D-line coach at Miami when I was down there. So I've known Dan. I've known his coaching style back when he was in Seattle. I know he went through some interview process. We actually interviewed him when I was in Minnesota. And I don't know if he was ready at the time, but there's no question when he got the Atlanta job to show what he can do as a head coach. And the thing that was the most impressive about Dan was that he goes back in a military term, after action review. So everything that he did good, but the mistakes he made, he just didn't sit there and say, oh, I screwed that up. He went back and studied everything on how he can get better the next time he got this opportunity. So I think it's going to be great for the Commanders, great for the fans, because of everything that he is as a coach now, what he's learned through the process, and how he corrected himself on some of the mistakes that he did make.
It got a little bit crazy there last week for a couple of days, guys withdrawing, names floating here and there. So I'm just curious, like you said, like how did you see Josh handle that? And is it, you talk about like how he's sticking to the process. Is that
well, he's successful in business because of his, I think, sticking to the process. And a lot of times the stuff that's the outside noise isn't actually what's going on inside. And I knew as we went through the process and interviewed all these guys, and Josh and Adam vetted through everybody, that there was no question that Dan was the right leader for this organization.
As somebody who's been on the outside of this organization, I'm sure you've looked at it over the years and seen the good and the bad, but what do you think they have now with Adam and Dan together?
First of all, this is a historic, iconic organization. And I remember, because it was brought up so much with Detroit, when I started out as a scout in Detroit, I remember coming in here and getting our arses kicked, in that NFC Championship game. So